Okay. So,
yep, go ahead.
Yeah, so the latest things that I'm doing, I'm applying for CIFAR grants. It just sounds like another grant. Well, how could that be interesting? But CIFAR is really interesting. They are a Canadian institution, CIFAR. There's no budget in the grant application. They decide what money you need, and they have continuous support of the work for like 30 or 40 years. So it's completely different from the usual. And the idea is the future of being human. What is the future of being human? And you might say, well, in what category are you applying? You're a doctor. You must be applying in the category of medicine. Category of medicine doesn't exist. They have about 40 categories, and so I'm ticking about half of the boxes, but medicine isn't one of them. And so it, I think, shows how broad my interests are and how many of them do kind of focus on what the future of life for human beings will be. So yeah, that's one thing. Another thing has to do with an idea that we had working on a memoir, and one of the young people helping me with that memoir, Ching Yin Wong, had the idea there's something neuroatypical about me, but in a positive way. And so we can find a test that would identify that.
And that's super interesting.
Yeah. And
wait, hold on. Yeah. Okay, because again, this is not 15 seconds, not third grade level. Most people won't understand what we're talking about here, so we have to simplify it. Right. So there's a test that you're developing that could explain how brains like yours work. Is that what you're saying? And have you done that?
Yes. Yeah, so it's an idea I never would have had, but it seemed like something worth trying. So there's a personality test, personality inventory, NEO-PI revised, and it's been around for a long time. So I took the test, and I thought that I would keep the results secret because my personality must be so strange and weird. I don't want anybody to know about it. But I turned out to be kind of like a poster child for this particular personality test, in that my openness to experience is sky high, about as high as it could possibly be.
I saw that.
My neuroticism, the degree to which I worry about things that don't need to be worried about, is practically zero. So
you have wow, that is super. And okay, let me make sure I understand this. This test is something you've created, or you took it?
No. This is a standard personality test for people who are not psychopaths. If you have normal people and you want to see what their personality is, this is like the standard test for that.
Openness to experience is sky high, and you're essentially not afraid of fear, basically.
Yeah. I don't spend a lot of time worrying about things, hardly any time. So that then explains a lot of things. Like if you look at the website for my company, the graphics look unusual, and people react one or two ways. They either like those graphics or they don't. What the characteristic is, yes, the characteristic is that when the artist reached the point where two lines meet, he goes beyond with both lines. So you end up with these little spicules every time lines meet. And I always regarded this as sort of rebel art. And, I knew that a lot of my friends really like this art, and a lot of people running large organizations really hate it. And I think now, for the first time, I understand your liking or not liking that art is related to your openness. and so it's kind of like an instant test for
It's a
openness.
magnet.
Yeah.
Where is this art? Where am I looking at this on your website?
So it's the main graphic. If you just look at justmachines.com or about that. So that guy, you may wonder about
with the
artist. Yeah, the artist is Daniel Hebert, Hebert, in Montreal. And I, commissioned him to do that art. I sort of fell in love with that art. And then he and I met. He lives in a suburb of Montreal. He rode his bike to Montreal where I was, and we met. It was a very surprising meeting because he told me that the kind of art I liked, he had given up forever. It didn't sell. He wasn't doing it anymore. He showed me the stuff he was doing now, and every line meets, and there's no spicules, no extensions. I was kind of crushed. I couldn't imagine. But I think that, if you look at most people taking that personality test, they don't score sky high for openness. They're sort of in the middle. That's where normal
or low
people are.
Low.
Yeah, or low, right? Yeah, and so that, I think, is kind of a strategic thing for us. It's really interesting that I believe those graphics be so closely tied to that personality trait, but it may also mean that we need to change the graphic associated with the company if like 95% of people don't like these graphics. I can recall the settings.
I will disagree with that. Most people don't understand what I'm talking about, but what the people who do are like you. The only ones I'm trying to attract are people like you. So most people are not like you. So I'm actually okay with 95% of someone, or even higher than that, not liking it.
Yeah.
Because it attracts the right people.
Yeah. So it certainly quickly selects people out, I think. And there was a spectacular occurrence in my life. And this is a short story. It didn't go on and on. We were going to meet with Microsoft. I was running something called NKF Cyber Nephrology. Microsoft was interested in supporting us. It was so exciting. So we had this meeting with Microsoft. Me and the CEO of the National Kidney Foundation. We were so excited, we forgot about lunch. So we arrive at Microsoft, we're both starving because we haven't had any lunch. You can't ask the people, hey, do you have any food? And so we're setting up, and he's looking at my PowerPoint we hadn't seen before. And he tells me that he hates the graphics. And so there's only the two of us, CEO of the National Kidney Foundation and me. And we're both starving because we haven't had any lunch. And we have PowerPoints that are sort of incompatible with each other. So as you can imagine, Microsoft didn't end up supporting us. I don't know if there's just one reason. There could be many, many reasons.
That graphic, right?
I've never seen any visitors to Microsoft who look so hungry and disgruntled. I don't know. But yeah, so anyway, that was a time that it really came home to me that some very important people in my life didn't like those graphics at all. And if you think about conformity, conformity is really important to many people running large organizations. It just makes everything easier. If most people react the same, do the same stuff, it's a lot easier to keep track of thousands of people than if you have a lot of statistical outliers and people doing completely different things.
100%.
And so a lot of what my life is like, I think, if you know the Latin phrase res ipsa loquitur, the thing speaks for itself. Events like that, where the thing speaks for itself, are happening to me over and over again.
Me too, constantly.
Like people criticize me in great detail. And then like a month later, they find I'm being praised for exactly what they were criticizing me for and so on. And so people remember that.
Well, you just see the future before most people are.
Yeah.
Right.
And so what happens is I don't have to say anything. I don't have to say, well, you were wrong. You criticized me. It's so obvious, right? The thing speaks for itself. I don't have to say anything. And like, if you think of the consequence of this interview today, like you might say, well, that can't be predicted. No, I think it can. Let me give you two specific predictions. One is that the idea that I have that the basic goodness of human beings, we need to focus a bit on that so there's some proof of that, because without that, our future is going to be very limited. When machines are smarter than we are.
Is this what your memoir is going to have?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when machines are smarter than we are, trying to figure out how much effort they should devote to maintaining us on Earth, and if there's no tangible proof of this basic goodness of human beings, we're in big trouble. And that you can confidently predict. It doesn't matter about the granular details of the future, when this happens and when that happens and so on. And if you want to get even more specific about it, think about where I am now. I'm in my office. I share it with one or two medical students. Their names are also on the door. Surrounding us, you walk down the hall, there's a residence room on either side. There are four trainees in one of those rooms and 7 in the other. At the present time, they're sort of deferential to me. They sometimes open the door for me and so on, but there's no contact between me and the young people in those 2 rooms. I predict after this interview that will change, because like these, lapel pins, you say, what is this guy got in his lapel? It's very simple. Groups of medical students wanted to show appreciation for my teaching of them, and that's where all 3 of those pins came from. And like, if you look at the last semester of the Technology and Future of Medicine course that I run, that was the most successful semester we've ever had. There were 33 young people taking the course in various ways. Medical students, ordinary undergraduate students, graduate students. So it wouldn't take very much to interest the 7 people in those other rooms I go past regularly every day in having more interaction with me. And I can, it's just the short-term future, but I kind of predict that in this coming week that will happen, that for the first time I have substantive.
That's interesting. So you made one gigantic entire prediction based on the human race, and then you made a very
local,
very specific local. That is
almost naming names. See, the names are there. If you go to the doors of the residence room, the names of the people are there. So I've referenced those, 11 people, 7 in one room, 4 in the other. And I predict that they're going to discover that the 33 other young people associated with the course are actually right, that I have something to offer. Something.
Okay, so good.
Yeah.
Okay, so to land the plane, because we're flying the plane here, right? Great. The memoir, does it have a publishing date, even if it's kind of, and then what is your 15 seconds, 3rd grade level, what is the goal for the memoir? What is your goal for that?
So what we would like to do simply, which doesn't seem possible last week, but I think it might be possible next week, is to connect the sort of fascinating interaction I had with Leonard Cohen and things about my personality with my interest in really large scale, long-term future of the human race and what it's like.
So that's good. You just simplified everything we were just talking. Good.
Yeah,
That's,
yeah.
That
to bring those two things together so that they can fit in one book and it all makes sense.
You know what it's called? You know what it's called?
Well, Serially Surreal will be part of the title. That's what Leonard Cohen.
I saw that. Yeah, I saw that in the book.
Yeah. So he felt that that two things. I was surreal over and over again. That's what serially surreal means. And that I didn't realize I was unaware of how surreal I was. So, anyway,
so this is a simplification is the wrong word, but this is a consolidation, also advancement of your 75 years and then what you think is the next whatever centuries, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's good. That's good.
It's kind of exciting because, as I said,
that's really good. That's good.
At the beginning, most 75-year-olds may not have a lot of long-term plans, but this CIFAR grant could potentially support me for the next 30, 40 years. So, hello there. So,
you got it. He's excited. He's a 4294, by the way.
Right. So it's kind of cool to be applying for something that could provide you with reliable support, and where your free time to be creative and do the research is really enhanced, because
you have the time.
The company will organize meetings and travel and all that sort of thing. You don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about budgets. They just
does CIFAR care that you're talking about this before a decision's made? Will they care?
They won't care. I think they'll see it as favorable. Good. I already have one video about that application.
Okay, good. I'm just making sure. Okay, good.
Yeah,
good.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So that's another news peg. Why memoir and then this application? That's smart. Okay, so that's good. That's good. And so now, and this might be helpful for you actually, and you probably thought about this at a very high level, is where this brain came from. Meaning, your parents, were they entrepreneurs? Were they academics? Like, when was your first realization that you're like, I'm not like most people? Well, I realized when I was like 5. So
yeah, I think on the day that I was born, my father was a doctor in training, so he was an intern at the hospital, and so he was looking after other patients at the time that I was born. So I was born by C-section, and then he came to see me very shortly thereafter in the newborn nursery. And it comes in, and I'm in this series of bassinets with other kids and so on. And
is this in Toronto, Montreal? Where is this?
It was in Washington, D.C. Yeah.
Oh, you're American.
Yeah. So, and the other kids on either side of me, the other newborns, are bawling and crying.
Oh my God.
And I'm like smiling and bopping and
and your dad told you this story?
Yes.
Your dad told you
this? Yes. This kid is going to be
This is what I mean. You are one
something different.
Day one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And was your mom stay at home, or did she do something? Or?
So she was a musician. She played piano.
Oh my God! You have medical and artistic. Wow.
Yeah. And so there was sort of like always beautiful music coming from our house. Like in the early days when I was.
Are you an only child? Are you an only child?
I have a sister. She's an artist also.
Okay.
Yeah. And So what people remember, even if they don't remember me, is the beautiful music coming from the home, because my mom would be playing piano. So anyway, yeah, and
Your mom, it was your mom playing the piano, not a recording.
well, both my mother and father played, but she was, Oberlin Conservatory trained, whereas my father was
What
just,
type of dad, or what type of doctor was your dad?
he was an internist. Yeah, so he was a cardiologist, and he worked in the VA hospital system, rose to be chief of staff and that sort of thing. So, yeah.
What's your dad's name?
Chester. Yeah. So my parents have both passed. My father died in 2019 and my mother in 2014. And what the gravestone says is, enjoy the music. That's what the gravestone says.
It's a side-by-side gravestone of.
Yeah. Enjoy the music.
Your parents. Wow. Yeah. Did it say that when your mom died, and then?
No. When my mom died, it talked about her as loving wife, mother, grandmother, great grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
And then when my father passed, he asked that we add the enjoy the music. Yeah. So, but he was mainly talking about her, because she had provided the music in his life. But one of the interesting things, like I won a mentoring award in 2016. And so for that, 35 young people had to write letters talking about why I should get this award, and many of them talked about the fact that many of the lessons from me go way beyond medicine to life itself, So that I feel very honored that they think that. But it makes me suitable to apply for a CIFAR grant, because if I only know medicine, then I'm not very suitable for long-term CIFAR support.
Human.
Yeah, I know humans in many different ways. I mean, if you think about my poetry pursuits, like my Instagram says, physician by day, poetry by night, but yeah, so that was and has been a very important focus for quite a long time. I first started writing poetry on November 20th, 2006. I was taking a course called Poetic Medicine from sort of our hospital poet Shirley Service. And but I started regularly attending Tuesday night poetry in 2014, and started providing a sort of infrastructure with lighting and videography and video editing in 2016. And this has been a major focus of my life. Sometimes it spills into the daytime life, where people may walk into my office if I do video editing of the Tuesday night poetry, and it sort of balances my life, because you might say my day life is very sort of elitist. I'm a doctor working at the hospital, interacting with other, medical doctors.
Well, it's your parents. You have the medical, and then you have the art. It's the same thing.
Yeah. But the Tuesday night poetry, it's mainly young people, say between the ages of 15 and 33, and they're sort of at-risk youth. That's the reason their poetry is so good, that, every time they leave the house, they're at risk. There are a lot of sort of gender fluid people there, and other people that may dress and look in a way that other people
think. And you organize these? These are your events?
No. I didn't organize it, but I provided the structure allowing it to happen. I would show up an hour and a half early, set up the lights and the chairs and all this kind of thing.
You set the thing up.
Yeah. I sort of provided the structure. And people who don't even have homes would be going to the library, using the library computer to interact with me about the editing of their latest poetry video. And there's like nothing.
These are at the library? These are at the library?
Yeah. So they would be homeless, but they could still go to the library and use, computers there to interact with me. And you would say, but aren't there dangers about interacting with people whose lives are on the edge like that? The only danger the thing I learned not to do early was to give people rides home. That is a big problem, right? Because that then directly puts me in a small vehicle with just them and so on. That isn't very cool. But once I realized that's not a good thing to do, everything else works. The fact that I'm the only physician there, that I'm 50 years older than everybody else in the room, that's just fine.
Just a number.
And it's a very beneficial thing for me. So think about that then. What do people in the workplace think about that kind of activity? I had a spectacular event, very short also. I decided to take a poverty simulation exercise with the United Way charity. They offer very high quality things where you sort of simulate being an impoverished person.
Yes.
And I did that. I was very proud of my performance. I kept my home and, things turned out well. I sort of kept it all together as this simulated impoverished person. So I come back to the hospital bubbling over with my positive feelings about this. And everybody around me says, I would never do that. The moment I got into medical school, I realized I was never going to be impoverished. So I've never spent a single second thinking about being impoverished. I think, what a waste. Poverty is a huge background of, illness in human beings. Rudolf Virchow talked about the physician is the natural attorney of the poor. What's he talking about there? The social responsibility of medicine and the fact that by improving society, you can do a lot more for health of a large number of people sometimes than focused intervention on specific, diseases. So there really is something there worth thinking about of how a lot of illness is related to, systemic racism, poverty, colonialism, all the ills of our society lead to physical ills, actually make people ill. So but I just think it makes me a much more balanced person that I have not only known very high profile people here in town, I've always known very low profile people here, and like the poetry at those sessions, 1/5 of the poems were about suicide, mental illness, and another 5th were about sexual assault. So, I mean, these, and you might say, well, gee, didn't that make you vulnerable? No, it turns out that the poetry leaders in town, they take suicide prevention courses. So it's not like people will turn to me and say, you're the only doctor here, do something. No, there are already people there who have taken suicide prevention, who know more about that than I do. And it was a wonderfully enriching experience. So Termis is similar. Termis is the main tissue engineering, regenerative medicine society. It's mainly not physicians. It's like masters and PhD kind of scientists. And so often I ended up at termis meetings being the only physician in the room. When a lot of other physicians have that happen, they're sort of thinking about their income, you know, ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. Why are they spending time at a place where there are no other physicians? Whereas I realize there's such benefit to being the only doctor in the room. You know, it's like a unique.
Well, you have
experience.
abundant mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you think about, you know, Bono in the musical group, U2.
Yeah, they're my favorite band.
So a very odd thing happened there. He had an idea, which I really espoused, and I talked about him a lot, organizing meetings between 2 or 3 people where you can't imagine those people ever being in the same room together. I found that so inspiring. But now, if you look that up, Bono saying that, you only find my own presentations, that he had pressures in his own life where people said, take that stuff down. The stuff about you meeting with people where there's no reason for those people to be in the same room. Take that down. And yeah, the same thing happened. If you think about the concept of mega macroscope, so I'm a pathologist. I use a microscope. I look at very small things, and the microscope makes them bigger, right?
Yep.
So the idea of the mega macroscope is sort of in the opposite direction, like taking something really big, like the basic goodness of human beings, and try to sort of bring it down to a manageable size. So I first had that in a presentation in 2009. And in 2017, I discovered that IBM had presentations about this mega macroscope. And I was really excited. And I thought, wow, yeah. But it was sort of unclear whether they got the idea from me or whether it spontaneously came to them. And then in preparation for talking with you, I thought I better check this stuff out. The IBM sites talking about this cannot be found. You'll search over and over again and find nothing. I think they discovered my sites and realized I had sort of priority here. And it didn't sound quite so, you know, glamorous as a new program for them, because I'd already been talking about it for 8 years. And so they took their stuff down. There's something else that IBM took down, which is also sort of interesting. In the period of my career between 2008 and 2014, I had a lot of video blogs and text blogs on a site called internetevolution.com. 57 total blogs there. On a certain day in 2014, a Friday night, everything went dark and has stayed dark. It was an IBM supported site, and they decided they no longer wanted to support it. Nobody else could be found to fill in the gap. And so all 57, or almost all 57 of those items in my CV were sort of lost forever at that moment. But I can tell you why this happened. You say, why would IBM do something like that?
No idea.
But what that site allowed is the following: sort of internet troll kind of people who hold strong opinions based on no reading that they've done at all, right? Just if an idea comes to them. So they would, for instance, criticize Ray Kurzweil, the great futurist, without reading any of his books or anything that he's ever written.
Right.
And so sort of pontificating and saying terrible stuff about people without any basis of ever having read a single word that they've written. And if I were IBM, I wouldn't want to be associated with a place that allows that. And so I'm not surprised that some high level person said, this just isn't us. We're not going to be a place where people can use our support to have a sounding board for sort of internet trolls and stuff. So to me, it makes perfect sense that the site came down. But so those are two sort of ways in which my life and decision making at IBM have interacted. And if you think about, well, shouldn't you go in and ask somebody in IBM to confess and tell you what happened? Absolutely not. I mean, this is another one of these race ipsa loquitur things. I think it's sort of obvious what happened. I wouldn't benefit in any way from finding somebody who could tell me exactly what happened, who made that decision. I don't think that's of any interest. So much of life is sort of like that. It kind of explains itself if you just watch the sequence. Somebody criticizing a non-conforming idea, and then the next month that non-conforming idea is the big thing. Yeah. So think about the name that Steve Jobs came up with for this thing, the iPad. People criticized and laughed about that when he came up with that term 100%. iPad. And within a month, he had captured that word. It was his. It didn't matter what people might have thought iPad meant last month. Now it meant this, and he was absolutely right not to be concerned about that. So I have lots of experiences in my life that sort of confirm that. So in my unit in the hospital called anatomical pathology, we use microscope slides sort of analyze what's going on in human tissues. So I'm sort of maintaining morale. I'm doing morale boosting stuff to make people feel happier in the workplace. There used to be 3 of us doing that. So one of us would post something and the other 2 would cheer it on. It hasn't been quite so much that way. And I realize I don't need somebody else cheering me on now. I've been doing this for a while.
It's 75 years.
If I know something's going to be positive for people and I post it, I don't need somebody else to sort of cheer me on to kind of validate that. I'm okay if nobody replies, as long as I'm sure that it had the positive effect that I intended. Yeah, so that's kind of where things are. And I see it as an opportunity for people because of the newness of my discovery about openness. So that testing of my personality was on April 22nd. And I didn't get the results until a month later, approximately May 20th. And so it's kind of nice because when I talk about this, I'm as excited as any listener is, because I've only known about this since May 20th, right? And I had no idea that this personality test was going to come up with anything interesting or explain any things.
Well, the Colby explains a lot too. I mean, Colby.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Sense.
Yeah. No, I enjoyed taking the Colby. I would encourage people. So now what's happening spontaneously, 7 of the young people associated with me are getting the same testing that I did. Yeah, doing the same thing. So it'll be voluntary whether they want to share it. They all say that they will, but we'll see. I'm certainly not going to force that.
I'm going to ask your 7 fact finder this one. If you know, maybe you don't know, are you the oldest person applying for this grant? Because that would be interesting. I'm guessing most folks apply for this in their 20s and 30s.
I would imagine that I am the chronologically oldest. I may be the biologically youngest. Yeah. No, there are lots of things about me. Like if you think of why I would never be a good stand-up comic, and I happen to know a lot about this. I've done stand-up comedy training. I think it's the hardest thing I've ever done. And my flaw is that I step on my own punchlines. I start, giggling at my own joke before the audience does. Yeah. And so I'm obviously enjoying talking to somebody, and that comes out in my mannerisms, and a lot of that comes from being surrounded by young people all day.
You hang out with young people.
Yes.
I see it. You actively do that.
The entire day. If I want to talk to somebody else, the only option is to talk to a young people. There's no translation required where, oh geez, I got to put this in the young people speak, or they have to translate into old guys speak. No, we're just both human beings talking, and enormous benefit can come, I think, both ways. From
100%. Yeah. I mean, you're just like Dan. I mean, Dan just turned 77, and most of the overwhelming majority of strategic coach members are under 70. So he just hangs out with younger people and keeps them young. So I totally understand that.
Yeah. So, like, if you think of this thing about scale, like this idea of Kardashev type 2 civilization capturing most of the energy from their star, their sun. There's some practical questions about this nobody has ever answered. What is that made of? How can you make it? How can you keep it secure? And it applies even with Kardashev type 1, which we'll get to at some point, where we surround the Earth. We immediately correct global warming with this thing. It will reduce the radiation received on the Earth to sort of just the right amount, and absorb the rest and make electrical energy directly out of that. But how do you keep something like this secure? What would it be made of? What new materials we need to come up with? I'm thinking it's something you can construct pieces of on Earth and test it on the ground. You don't have to put it up in the sky like that from the starting point. As far as I know, nobody's talked about this. It's called a Dyson sphere, and so Dyson talked about the general concept. But I think I'm the first person to talk about the practical sides of this, as I am the person talking about the practical sides of, okay, the human race has these big 6 problems, that everybody on the planet has, and how can we get AI to help us with that? Now that AI has solved protein folding, it seems likely that since they can solve something like that is beyond our understanding, so that this is what protein folding looks like. No human being can really understand how protein folding works. So it's more complicated than systemic racism, nuclear war, colonialism, climate emergency. All those things are simpler than this is. And yet AI has solved this.
So if they can solve something harder, they can solve it.
Yeah. So that's one of the main ideas in the grant, and so I
good. I can simplify this. I can do it.
Yeah, it's kind of an opportunity for somebody because of the fact that this is a brand new idea, that there is no upper bounds of how big we can think. And
good.
I think people may not have realized that before, or not have realized it's already.
That was outlier thinking. That's just going to become mainstream. That's what people. I mean, it's the same thing with Bitcoin. That's people are saying no Bitcoin, no, and it's the outlier. Now it's becoming more.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Yeah. So I think that as time goes on, you're quite right. People are going to kind of speculate about, from an operational point of view, what is my age, right? I'm chronologically 75, but from a sort of operational point of view, what is my age? There are times when it seems to be 18 or 19, something like that. So anyway,
right.
Yeah, and I've got this sort of happy little 18-year-old bursting free every now and then, and that's the reason that I step on the punchlines of my stand-up comedy. And
right.
So I
well, this is good. This is good. Good.
So
I'll simplify it. Oh, go ahead.
The final thing I wanted to point out, and this is important in the grant, is a lot of things you don't have to succeed at for it to have benefit. Just trying helps you. So if you think of AI solving the big 6 problems of the human race, and also solving AI alignment, just having AI work on those things helps AI to get to know us better, right?
It's the next step.
Yeah. And it improves the chances that sentient machines will think humans are good people. We need to keep them around, right? That would be enormously beneficial if that was the conclusion that they came to. So having them work on all 6 problems helps us even before they succeed in solving them. And
I'll give you a perfect example. I was just listening to a podcast the other day. The FDA basically approved a drug on Alzheimer's, even though there's no conclusive proof. But there's kind of some, which is that they usually don't approve things like that. But one of the takes on that is that because they're approving it, all this money goes into that, and then maybe this drug doesn't actually do it, but because there's so much money in it now, that something else will develop, and there'll be more money in research that will solve the problem. So it's the same thing, longer term view.
Yeah, I think sort of the standard way of thinking about life, I'm very proud if I just gradually change that a bit. So people who are leading a life with precedent entirely, in that they're looking at somebody else with the same job and they're trying to do the same thing as that person, they will realize that there are a lot of things that could be improved in life leading a life without precedent. And it's actually easier. If you lead a life with precedent, then there are all these metrics to compare you with everybody else who's trying to do the same thing. Right? If you do something brand new, there's no metric. And as 100%. You yourself have said, now I quote you, at the highest level, there is no competition. There's only collaboration. So,
well, that's what it is.
Yeah.
And you and I are like the same person. I'm going to tell you why. You'll laugh at this. I won't laugh at my own joke, but so my dad, I think I told you, my dad was 61 when I was born. So I really should be late 70s, early 80s. Okay. I'm 44 years old. And then I have the childish mentality mindset maybe of a 5-year-old, not definitely younger than 18, definitely younger.
Right.
And that's your entire key. Your entire key is your mindset.
Yeah.
That's number one. And because I simplify everything and have interviewed thousands of people at the highest level. So I've only found 2 commonalities between the highest performing entrepreneur, entertainer, thinker, whatever that is. Okay. 1 is they have the same mindset. 2, and this relates to you for sure, they've had at least one person in their lives actually care about them. At least one.
Right.
That's the only 2 commonalities I've seen.
Yeah. Well, no, I certainly have that. And
right. Oh, you have it at the highest level. Yeah. You have it at both of them, by the way, because you're caring about people, and you had 2 very high level people care about you. At least 2. I'm sure there were more, but yeah.
No, I've had a wonderful support system all the way along. And if you think of like the students that I'm interacting with, young people, all the opportunities that came to me through them, it's just absolutely amazing. Like
endless.
The latest slide sets that I've had, you may wonder, well, who came up with those slides? So did I create the slides? No, I didn't create a single one of those slides. So like the young people, that's why it's such a sort of youthful looking slide set, right? So there are a lot of things like that just are a natural attribute of my life that I think would be very beneficial for other people. It's just another way. Your mother and father may have told you that the normal life is to hang out with people your own age, but they're just enormous benefits.
Well, I couldn't do that because my parents were 34 years apart. That's what I mean. So from day one, you. And again, so your dad from day one could have been like, okay, what's wrong with my child? He's the only one not crying. Or he could have been like, okay, he's special. So from day one, you had the right answer. You had the right start. Right. That's the difference. I mean, that's okay. Good. So in terms of logistical stuff, so I will take all of this. I should be able to write the story today. I should be. If not today, by tomorrow for sure. I will send that to you. You can edit, change whatever you'd like. That's fine. The way this is written is so it simplifies your message. Simplifies your message. Okay, so it's helpful for you. And then for people interviewing you, it helps them understand what you're up to in a way they can understand it, and then ask you deeper questions that'll lead to a more interesting conversation. But if they can't understand it, if it's too complicated, they're not going to want to talk. So that's the reason why it's written in a simple, elegant, streamlined way. That's the reason.
So I just don't want to get ahead of Alan Showalter. You will realize from my interaction with him, he's just about to post that Leonard Cohen related piece that is sort of a taste of what my memoir will be like.
Right.
So the ideal thing would it be if that came out first and then sort of right after?
Well, you can, so you can do whatever in terms of when you want to publish the link that you send to me. You can wait. I don't care. That doesn't matter. Yeah. I just can't start pitching until I have the link, because the link is an easy. I just boom, 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 and then it's intro. I just need the link to send it. So,
okay. Well, I look forward to the rest of that process then, and
it's very easy.
Thank you very much. It's a good situation because as I point out, it is predictable that we will succeed here, and good things will come of this interaction that we've had during this hour.
No doubt. There's no.
One can confidently predict that. So.
Well, I mean, one, I have the data behind knowing who my network is, who would want to. I already know people that would. I don't even have to write this story, but it's good just so others can have the background. I know 20 people that would want to talk to you right now in a platform, by the way, where you can actually, go longer.
Yeah, sure.
So, and then again, I think as important, if not more important for you, is that it simplifies everything that you're up to, because you are up to a lot,
Right.
but this will help you in that regards exponentially.
Yeah, no, it will be useful even if, for instance, I don't use any of the actual text in the CIFAR grant. I may need to modify it for that, but it's still helpful, because CIFAR doesn't want a completely unknown applicant. They want the feeling that people already know about me. That's a much better applicant to have.
Well, that's good too. So again, shared experience, and just to plant the seed, because I do media interviews all the time. I still do 2 to 3 a week. And those opportunities, it's great to talk about yourself, but it's also, you really develop and execute good ideas during those discussions.
Sure. Yes.
It's really, well, just like this discussion.
Yeah.
So just think about that too, as the message evolves, or what you want to put in something, just from discussions being interviewed.
Sure.
And these people are very high level. They're all like you. I mean, not all of them, but a lot of them are like you. They're just high level collaborators with this type of mindset. So it'll be fascinating in that regard. Okay, so I will almost certainly write this today. Maybe 400, 500 words. It obviously could be a book, but media doesn't need to read a book. They just want it simple. So
sounds good. Okay, great. Thank you,
Doctor. I'm excited
very much, Justin. And
thank you so much, Doctor.
Talk to you again soon. Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you very much.